Let me hammer down on this now even harder. Of course, a reporter, a media outlet, should see its responsibility in part as holding government officials accountable. If they're corrupt, if they're violating the Constitution, and so forth. But when they see their purpose as making it as difficult, if not impossible, for a president to function, that is not what freedom of the press is about. That's what statist progressivism is about. This freedom of the press is not the privilege of a reporter or a news organization. It is a privilege granted to the American people. So of course there can be criticism of the government. There should be. Of course there should be monitoring of the government. There should be. But that's not the same as having as an agenda a purpose to advance an ideological policy perspective, a political party policy perspective, and or to make it difficult, if not impossible, for a legitimately elected president of the United States to function. To function. Because then you have a privileged reporter or organization, corporation, which is abusing its power, claiming to be part of a free press, when in fact its objective has nothing to do with the press, with upholding a constitutional republic or anything of the sort. Now, let's move away from the philosophical in a sense here. Does anybody really believe that CNN even intends to be a news organization? Why? Because they sprinkle news out there? Like sprinkles on a cupcake? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. It's not a news organization. You know, you might say, well, neither is Fox, neither is MSNBC. They don't claim to be pure news organizations. CNN gave birth to this whole cable idea of cable news network. Isn't that what CNN means? But it's not really news. It's now working with Lanny Davis and working with Michael Cohen. It worked with James Brennan in the past. It's working with former Obama officials, former Clinton officials, other individuals who used to work for or around Trump, not for the purpose of providing you with information and news that of substance type or quality that has anything to do with the Republic. They are committed to sabotaging the president and his agenda. And that's what they do day in and day out. Let's go back to this clip. It's very telling of, what's his name, Jake Tapper on the Stephen Colbert Show. Cut 4 again, Mr. Producer. Go ahead.
Here's the bottom line. The United States was attacked. The United States was attacked by Russia. Now, it wasn't like Pearl Harbor. It was a cyber attack, and it was a disinformation campaign, but we were attacked. And there is this investigation to find out what happened. Now, part of the investigation has to do with Donald Trump and whether or not anybody in his orbit cooperated, but there's this other larger investigation about what happened and how can we prevent it from happening again. And there are a whole bunch of people...
No, that's not what's happening. It's being investigated. How can we prevent it from happening again? Who's doing that? Mueller's not doing that. It's not even his job. Department of Justice isn't doing it. That's not their job. The FBI's not doing it. It's not their job. Who is investigating it so it doesn't happen again? I'll tell you who. The Republicans on the House Intelligence Committee. Not the Senate Intelligence Committee. Not anybody else. They're the ones doing it. And Jake Tapper and his network trash them all the time. Not because they're trying to edify the American people or hold the government to account, because they're advancing an ideological agenda and making it as difficult as possible for that committee to function, to even function. Go ahead.
prevent the investigation from going forward. I mean, imagine if somebody tried to prevent the investigation into how Pearl Harbor happened from going forward. You would say that that person is not being patriotic.
This shows not just an ideological point of view and utter confusion. It shows stupidity. Mueller is a prosecutor, Jake Tapper. He's not investigating anything to make sure it doesn't happen again. Prosecutors didn't investigate Pearl Harbor. The military investigated it. A civil commission investigated it. I have no problem with a civilian commission investigating what took place in the last election, but that's not what you're talking about, Jake Tapper. So you're talking not only out of ignorance, but you're driven ideologically, and you're insisting that this prosecutor be protected. This prosecutor, who is burning through our Constitution each and every day with every motion and with every indictment. And the reason you're doing this, Jake Tapper, and the reason the entire lineup at CNN does this, is because they want to make it as difficult as possible, if not impossible, for this president and his administration to function. That is not the purpose of a free press. The reason why CNN and MSNBC, but particularly CNN, kept bringing on the porn star and her slip and fall lawyer wasn't to inform you about anything. It was to make it impossible, difficult for this president to govern. Their whole point is to sabotage him and his presidency. And we don't even need to get into all the details. I get into that frequently enough and what motivates them and so forth. But that's not the purpose of a free press. Might be the purpose of an opposition political party, might be the purpose of an activist organization, might be the purpose of a union, it might be fine. That's not supposed to be the purpose of a free press. But if you're going to conduct yourself this way, if you believe you're a 24/7 news operation, which has as its objective making it difficult, if not impossible, for the president to function, then you should at least openly align yourselves with proper transparency and labeling. We expect it when we buy a can of soup. We should expect it when we listen to an operation like CNN, which is not a news organization. This is why so many of you get frustrated. Wonderful news comes out today. The American economy is growing, thanks primarily to tax cuts, because that's what tax cuts do, but it undermines the narrative of the Democrat Party, tax cuts. It undermines the progressive agenda, which is to centralize government and to raise taxes and to funnel as much money out of the private sector into the government and the bureaucracy. Moreover, many people, if not most, vote based on how the economy is doing, specifically how it affects their own lives and their family. Well, the economy is doing very well. Tax cuts work. The GDP is over 4%. We haven't seen this in years. Now, the media do not have to pat the president on the back of the head. But these obvious, relentless, routine distractions have a purpose. And that is to undermine your faith in what's going on in the country, to undermine your support for policies that have created such outcomes, to drive the statist progressive agenda, and again, to try and sabotage the man they despise who happens to be president of the United States. Again, that's not the purpose of a free press. Now, that said, can people who own media outlets, can people who are hosts on media outlets, can people who are so-called reporters for media outlets do this? Of course they can. Should the government interfere? No, the government should not interfere. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is we need to have a discussion, we need to have a debate about what we mean by a free press, because it's obvious the ethical standards are non-existent. There are no standards. They'll even hire Al Sharpton as a commentator and a host. Miscreants and malcontents, conga lines of them. Eric Holder said we need to have a debate about race. We never stop debating race, but we never have a discussion about the press. Other than people coming on the air on TV and radio and whining about them. We need more. We need to get down to the nitty-gritty, which is what I'm trying to do. You have media outlets that really do self-identify. National Review is an example. On the other end, The Nation or Mother Jones. Conservative Review TV. So forth and so on. But these network outlets and most of the cable outlets, they have as their purpose not to be truthful about who they are and what they are. So they use odd nomenclatures. They call everything they do news. Let us focus in on this Jim Acosta. Jim Acosta is not a reporter. He is in that press room for the purpose of disrupting the office of the presidency. He's not there to glean any useful information on behalf of the American people. He's not really there to drill down here and there and so forth and so on. He's a man of antics. He's a man of drama. He's a man who wants attention drawn to himself, an egomaniac. And what this Caitlin Collins did is of the same sort. Trashed a little over a year ago by Wolf Blitzer and others at CNN and MSNBC, and now she's held up like the paragon of the First Amendment and free press. All right, I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.